Well, this morning I'd like to introduce the philosophical proposal that we live in a simulated universe and that our perception of the physical world is an illusion. This is a brief introduction with some of my thoughts about it. It would be a perfect subject to have an interactive talk with the group about it. Last time I did that with the humanists of Houston, I had a half an hour talk and it took an hour and a half, so it's not practical. However, I would like to try to have some time at the end of the talk here for questions and comments. One thing I thought about is if I say something that you're really curious about but don't understand, and you think I can answer it quickly, raise your hand or something and let me identify you, and I'll try and do it. But I think if it's impractical, then I'm just going to go on, because otherwise I just won't have time to get through it. The question is there more? A personal question about life is there more? I expect many of us have had personal experiences that made us wonder about it. I had one at our Nebraska farmhouse. I was drilling a hole through a floor to run wires down from a room in the upstairs down to the basement. And I was concerned that I might hit some wires or pipes down in the basement. So I stationed Katie down in the basement with a flashlight and asked her when the thing came through to make sure I'm not hitting anything. And I started drilling. And suddenly, my complete consciousness was overwhelmed by my mother's voice. Now, she'd been deceased for, 20 years, and her voice said, I wonder what he is doing. Oh, it's just one of those things that men do. And then it disappeared, gone. And I was just, I stopped drilling and I was just frozen. And after a while, Katie came up from the basement and said, John, what's wrong? Are you all right? What happened? And so I explained the situation to her and basically told her to go back downstairs, and I finished the job. So I didn't know what to make of it, but I still wanted to get it done. Now, Katie, my wife here of 62 years, steadfastly maintains that there is more. And she likes to tell various stories and experiences that she has to support that. And our daughter Jill is a very sensitive person, and when we used to go up and visit the farm, she always said that my mother's ghost was a resident there in the farmhouse, and she gave various experiences that she had to support that. But recently when we went up, she said, well, your grandmother's ghost isn't around anymore. I can't detect her. Now, of course, the question is what to make of things like this. I favor experience things that involve coincidences and peculiarities in the way that the brain works. But who knows? I like to keep an open mind about it. Philosophers have questioned our interpretation of physical reality since ancient times. Recent advances in computer simulations and artificial intelligence have resulted in a renewed interest in the possibility that we ourselves live in a simulated rather than a physical reality. And there's surprisingly robust information out there to support this. And it's become quite popular in some areas, but I don't think it's got out into the general public very much. The search for reality. What is real? The way we think of the everyday concept of reality, it's related to the things that we do and situations where things aren't always the way we think they ought to be, and we have to get real to actually conform to reality. But the philosophical definition of the term is just the opposite. Reality, philosophically, discounts everything we understand, know, and experience as a construct of the mind created by the brain. Philosophical reality is what exists independently of this construct, and even our existence. In other words, if we did not exist, what would be out there? This can be illustrated by the riddle of a tree falling in a forest. Got a big old tree and it falls in the forest. And the question is, does it make any sound? How many say, I'm going to do a little survey here. First yes and then no. How many people think it makes a sound? Raise your hand. Does it make a sound? How many people say it doesn't make any sound? Okay, the no's have it. The reason is sound is a construct of our brains. It's something we experience individually that is developed by our brains. No brains, no sound. So the question is, what is there? Okay, now we go back to the tree. It's fallen in the forest. Nobody's there. What just happened? That's the question. One approach is to describe the situation mathematically. We know now that we can develop equations, put them together in algorithms, run it in a computer to simulate this situation. And we can do this in as much detail as we want to do it. And we can project it on the screen if you want to see it. But this is not real, of course. But you can do it. And the question is, when you do this, what have you got? And it's mathematical. And mathematics is a construction of the human brain. So since mathematics is a construction of the human brain, is this also a construction? Well, that's another question. But mathematics is not physical. Mathematics is not a physical construct. It's a collection of abstract concepts. It is often applied to situations by scientists and engineers, works fine, but it's an independent construction. Einstein once said, the amazing thing wasn't that he could use mathematics to describe the universe. The amazing thing is that mathematics can describe the universe. Think about it. Why can mathematics, a human abstract construct, describe the universe? Well, theoretical physicists have developed a standard model that describes and predicts many really weird things that happen in the universe. And they often refer to this work as the search for reality. And as far as I know, the philosophers haven't complained about it. Since everything we know is a construction by our minds from the working of our brains, it is possible that what really exists independently of our ideas concerning it could involve some surprises. Think about that. We do not have a handle on reality. Simulated reality. Our experience tells us that we live in a physical world populated with real solid objects. If I bring my hand down hard on this podium, it's met with resistance and produces a solid thump. As you know, this action could be accurately simulated in a computer and projected on the screen complete with the thump, without it actually happening. could be made to resemble or simulate the real thing. But we'd all know that it's not real. Computer programs exist that interact with us so much like humans that is an ongoing debate as to whether they are sentient or not. It's likely to be possible to develop autonomous sentient beings living in computers based on what we now have. Then they could interact with each other in the computer, just like we do. And then they could interact with us on the outside. They don't do it yet, as far as anybody is saying, but we got all sorts of legal and ethical problems coming up about this. I read recently of an AI computer program that was slated to be shut down, and this program somehow learned about this, tried to take itself out of the server and go someplace else on the internet, but they caught it and shut it down anyhow. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds pretty interesting. But the question then becomes, if we can do this, could this also describe our own existence? Some are proposing that not only is it possible, but it's likely. The details of how this actually might be accomplished are science fiction based on our current knowledge about how things work. And I'm going to skip it and go on to some other aspects of it. But it is quite interesting to think about this. I want to go on to next to evidence. We always like to use evidence to look for things. And the question is there any evidence for simulated reality? Now, I've watched a lot of YouTube lectures and read articles about this, and they usually say there's no good way to answer this question. But I disagree with it. I think, as a matter of fact, that in this particular area and in almost any area that we tend to look into, that we tend to poke the universe until we get something out of it that satisfies us as to what is going on. And I see no reason at all why this would be any different. I have two things that I have thought about that I think support this idea of simulated reality, that we are actually simulations. Sounds weird. The first is that it's completely consistent with our current mathematical pursuit of reality in theoretical physics. As Einstein pointed out, it's amazing that it works, and the fact that it works probably tells us something about reality. Our computer simulations are mathematical constructs, and the existence and the extension and evolution of this technology could lead to the development of our own initially very small simulated universes. Our own universe could be a mega version of what we live in, and science fiction likes this. They propose that we may eventually create the next layer down, and in science fiction we may even make the transition to it if we screw things up here too badly. We might migrate into our own creation, that may be an alternative for the future. The second, and I think much more interesting area of evidence, is the question of the existence and nature of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, and how they might relate to simulated reality. Now, this seems obvious to me, but I haven't encountered any reference to it. I don't understand this, but I think that may tell you something. For example, if we live in a simulated autonomous universe created by beings on the, quote, outside, unquote, they might like to know what's going on inside their creation from time to time. And They probably send probes into it, again, mathematical probes. And these probes would probably operate on the physics of their source rather than our physics. And their appearance would be quite spectacular to us. We wouldn't understand what's going on. And yet, it would be perfectly consistent with the idea of somebody outside of our own reality taking a look at us to see what's happening. The performance reported by some of the UFOs, certainly not all of them, fit this characterization. They've been observed to silently accelerate from hovering to astonishing speeds, requiring thousands of G-forces. Now, the human body can tolerate about 8 Gs, and our sturdiest fighter aircraft disintegrate at about 17. Our aircraft can hover and demonstrate supersonic flight, but they're very noisy. If you want to hover, you're going to be in a helicopter and make a lot of racket. If you want to go to supersonic, you get sonic booms, and man, you know it. Lighter than aircraft can hover silently, but because of their construction, they can't go very fast at all because they fall apart. UAPs have been observed, some of them, to make sharp right-angle turns at speed, accelerate at astonishing rates, and disappear, all impossible according to our physics. The world's top scientists know that these observations are scientifically impossible. And these guys didn't become famous by promoting impossible science. They won't investigate or even comment on them, except to question the credibility of anybody who says anything about it. They defy our current, very well-established and tested knowledge of very basic physics. Those who claim UAPs are the work of extraterrestrial aliens may also be off the mark. With their outlier physics, a more rational explanation may be that they are probes from outside of our universe. In fact, from a practical point of view, that's the only good explanation. Consequences. What I'd like to do is to go on and discuss some possible consequences. The subject's been picked up by some college teachers of philosophy and science fiction, and they have produced a lot of very interesting YouTube talks and commentary. When and if it ever goes mainstream, then we'll have some more conventionalized information about the probability and potential consequences of living in a simulated universe. But the following ideas represent some of my own ideas about it, just something that I kind of done for fun and combined with that of others. Purpose. A purpose that has been proposed for the construction of our simulated universe is gaming and intellectual entertainment for our creators. Entertainment is a common activity in humans and other animals when they have free time, are comfortable in their surroundings, and have everything they need. It could be a common pastime for our creators and, in fact, might be their basic reason for their existence. This may be what they do. Religion. Now, this is my own. It's possible that the gods of the ancients represented gaming players. Then the description of gods and goddesses might relate directly to the players themselves. With the time, the number of players might have declined until the current few that might have chosen to discontinue direct communications with us. And simulated reality provides a perfectly rational basis for religion. It may not be what the religious scholars had in mind, but I expect they will take what they can get because it gives much more significance to the world's religions. And science. A revelation that we live in a simulated universe would have a profound effect on science. It provides some insight on the effect of the revolution 165 years ago when The Origin of Species was published. Before that time, the mainstream scientific establishment and the general public embraced the religious doctrine as the basis for reality. The current rebelliousness of the religious right-wing conservatives illustrates how entrenched these ideas were at the time and still are in some quarters. As a result, it may be predicted that even if good data supported the simulated universe, it might be decades or longer before it would be accepted by the scientific community. It might be welcomed more by religious compared to scientific thinkers. Ourselves. If it was demonstrated that we live in a simulated reality, it could have a large effect on how we think about ourselves, our others, relationships, and our environment. Instead of physical entities, we might consist of individual, autonomous, free-ranging programs that evolved from simpler forms as predicted by evolution. Our individual programs might be born, age, die, and continue to exist after death as archived souls to provide more, and all in an instant from the point of view of our creators. And of course, the big question is, what about our creators? One author pointed out that if we are simulations and are currently in the process of creating another layer of simulations, then our creators must also be simulations. If it works for us, it's got to work for them. Instead of turtles all the way down, then it would be simulations all the way up. If the motive is entertainment and chaotic behavior is entertaining, an occasional conflict might be necessary to satisfy our gods. The players might find wars and conflicts to be especially entertaining, increase UAP activity to follow the action, and even stir things up if things become boring. It's been pointed out that if we ever discover the true nature of a simulated existence and take control of it, the gods might be upset, or worse, bored, and they might end the game with biblical end-of-times consequences for all of us. Conclusions. Katie said, John, don't go too fast. Go slower on this and pause occasionally. So it's her fault. What, if anything, can we conclude? From the usual non-philosophical, practical, everyday reality that we experience, it's already a simulation constructed by our brains that we each develop and use to direct our everyday lives. The question is, are we the product of physical random evolution, or did we have outside help? What we now call science was originally naturalism. Early naturalists bravely sought natural explanations based on observations of nature. Everything else was compartmentalized into the supernatural. This approach has consistently demonstrated useful explanations and accurate predictions. As a scientist, I expect we live in a physical world, but I like to understand and to think about new things, more or less just for my own entertainment. There's little chance of any progress or meaningful mainstream public discussion about alternative realities, like I'm delivering here today. You're probably just not going to hear this. But it's a good idea to keep an open mind about it. If UAPs are confirmed to break our laws of physics, they may provide evidence that there is more and that a supernatural exists. It's, again, most logical explanation. In the meantime, government policy about UAPs seems to be consistent with what the wife of a 19th century English bishop said to her daughter after they had attended a lecture about evolution. "My dear, let us hope it is not true. But if it is, let us pray that it will not become generally known." Now, I had thought some about having time for questions and comments, but for one, it wouldn't work out very well. I couldn't hear your question, understand your questions anyhow. But I do have two takeaways that I want to indicate. The first takeaway I think that may be of value to you is that all aspects of our existence is a construction by our brains. And that's just the way it is. And that's something that I think people should kind of understand. And another aspect of it is that our educational process standardizes our brains so we can talk with each other. We do this socially and through our education. That's why education is so important. Second thing is, if some UAPs are proved to break the laws of physics of this universe, now you need proof, of it. You hear a lot about them, but I don't know if it constitutes proof. But if it's true, then the most logical way for them to do this is if they're coming from outside of our universe.